Hello there, welcome to Bryan Lomax Movie Talk. Finally, it's here, Joker. This is my most anticipated film of the year. It wasn't to begin with, it must be said. When this was first announced, that they were doing a solo Joker film, an origin story, it raised a few eyebrows, not least of which mine. It did not sound like a good idea, but with the announcement of Joaquin Phoenix taking on the title role of Joker and a lot of other news that kept on arising out of it, it'd be influenced by a lot of 70s Martin Scorsese films. It started to show promise to the point where it became my most anticipated film. And then we started to get footage coming out and I got really excited about it. Then all the early reviews started coming out, and it almost felt too good to be true. It was just like a lot of people hailing it as best DC film ever, this, that and the other. Joaquin Phoenix being lauded for his performance, a lot of Oscar talk. So yeah, going into this, a lot of expectations. I went to see this twice. I watched it, I came out, and then I watched another film just to give myself a bit of a breather, and I went back in and I watched it again. And I got to say, how I felt about it when I first watched it, I felt the same on second watch, which is that I absolutely flipping loved this film. Absolutely loved it. It met all of my expectations. It exceeded them. I'm probably not going to say a right lot in this review that you haven't heard by now, because let's face it, every man and his dog is reviewing this film. This is just one of millions of other reviews that will get lost in the pile, I'm sure. But for whatever it's worth, this is my 2 cents. So the story, for those who don't know, follows this character of Arthur Fleck, who has a mental illness. Part of that mental illness is that he has uncontrollable laughter. Usually when he's in tense situations, it seems, he just starts bursting out laughing, and that obviously creates a lot of social problems for him, gets him into hot water at times, makes him a bit of an outcast. And he lives in Gotham City, which is basically, as it is in the comic books, one of the worst cities on the planet. It is crime-ridden, it is full of garbage, it's got a rat problem, the people that are living in poverty are just really not well off at all, and there is a bit of a divide between the rich and the poor. There's a very big divide between the rich and the poor, and the rich in this film is represented primarily by the character of Thomas Wayne. That's right, Bruce Wayne's father. We get basically a character study of Arthur Fleck as he descends further and further into madness, as the city around him, his circumstances begin to shape who we know he's going to become. Obviously the title character, Joker. It's a very, very interesting journey. It's a journey which produces sympathy for our main character and yet also doesn't kind of let him off the hook, so to speak. There was a lot of talk before the film's release that it was going to have a real negative effect and inspire a lot of incels to do things that, quite frankly, obviously no one should be doing. But I think it's nonsense. I think that criticism, if anybody is still holding it, I know that there are some pretty top-rated critics out there, the likes of David Ehrlich, who, he subscribes to that whole notion that this could inspire a bunch of incels, or he certainly thinks this is a call to incels, a sympathetic ear to incels. I think that's complete nonsense. I think it's absolute bollocks, if I'm being perfectly honest, because what we have here in this character of Arthur Fleck is not an incel, okay? Based on what I've read, based on what I've looked at with regards to the definition of incels, he is not one. He is a mentally disturbed guy. This is someone who has mental conditions, mental problems. He stops taking his medication as a result of closures within medical care facilities, social work facilities in the city. You know, this is more a look at what people who are out on the fringes of society, who aren't taken care of in the way that society should be taking care of them, what happens when they're abandoned, when they're pushed to the side, when they're kept down, trodden on for so long. Something's got to give. Now, again, as I say, I don't think it is a call to this kind of behaviour. I don't think it's instigating it and saying, yes, this is acceptable. But what I do think it is doing is holding a mirror up to society and saying, you know what? We all have a responsibility. We are all part of this thing called humanity. You know, we have a responsibility towards each other. And for me personally, this whole argument about incels, this whole kind of criticism towards the film, this dismissal of the film because of that argument, feels very much to me like dismissing responsibility, like saying, actually, I don't want to listen to this argument because if I do, it means I have to take notice of the responsibility that I have in society to look out for those people who can't look out for themselves, or who, you know, people like Arthur Fleck in this movie. It's a very relevant film for today's problems. I've been on benefits. I still am on benefits, if I'm being perfectly honest. I've dealt with the system. I have a master's degree. I'm a fairly intelligent guy. And yet that system, the benefit system, the system that I genuinely needed, it was very, very hard to navigate. And I think this film, it resonates with me because I can imagine not having the kind of intelligence that I have. I don't say it to blow my own trumpet, but I mean that in the most sympathetic way. There are people out there on the fringes of society who do have to deal with that system and systems like it, who, need help and don't get it. Just don't get it because the system is flawed. I don't mean to get into a big rant here about social justice and all this, but that's what the film is about. And I think it does a very good job. It touches a nerve, dare I say, in many different ways. If you're like me and you can relate, you might sympathise with this main character and, like I say, realise that this is a call to all of us to act better. Or you might feel differently. You might look at the character of Arthur Fleck and say he brought it on himself. He's a sad sack. He's this, that and the other. Personally, I think that's a wrong attitude to take. I think that you completely miss the point if that's how you feel. If you just kind of diminish this character to nothing more than an incel. Rant on that side over with. But like I say, that's really the big issues that the film is dealing with, and I think it does it very well. Because, as I say, it does a very in-depth character study of Arthur Fleck. It shows us who he is, it lets us sympathise with him, but it also shows his flaws. It shows his mental illness in its rawest form. We see this man spiralling out of control. It is not a fun watch. It is not a Marvel movie. It's not entertainment in that respect, though it is entertaining, just, as I say, for different reasons. This is what I would call cinema. You know, it's a movie that is about something. It's serious, it's dark, it's gritty. It's not going to be for everyone. Joaquin Phoenix as Arthur Fleck, the Joker, is absolutely astounding. There is no other word for it. He is astounding. He steals every second of this film. His performance is completely immersive. I totally believe he is this person. He is this character. And watching his descent into madness, as he comes off his pills, because he has no choice. Again, as I say, the system has failed him. And you see this slow descent, and it's heartbreaking, it's scary, it's violent at times, very violent, and it's really disconcerting because, again, as I say, the way it relates to things going on in the real world. Todd Phillips, as director, needs to be commended as well for drawing that performance out of him. Now, I'm sure Phoenix doesn't need too much to get that out of him. He's an absolutely brilliant actor. But Phillips, you know, he's known for his comedies. He does hangover movies, movies I don't like. But he also made Due Date, which does suffer from some of those hangover hang-ups, which I don't like. But that is a movie as well that did have a bit of a dark streak to it and an edge. And I remember there being a moment in that film where the character played by Zach Galifianakis, he has this really heartfelt moment that was genuinely touching, and it caught me off guard because I wasn't expecting it in that film. And I think it does show that this kind of seriousness, this ability to produce the goods in that regard has always been there in Phillips. And also, you know, he did make War Dogs, which I do feel is a very underrated film. And that was a very serious effort from him as well. Admittedly, it did have humorous elements in it, but it was a very good, serious and quite dark film. So he's no stranger to these elements, I don't think. It's just that here he goes, full tilt down the dark alley. We do see the journey of Bruce Wayne. You know, we know what happens to Bruce Wayne. Obviously, we've seen his origin story numerous times in movies, and I'm sure we'll see it many more times. But we see a few scenes of Bruce in this film, and I really love the way they tie Joker's history to Bruce's in this. I won't say any more than that because I don't want to spoil things, but yes, they are tied. Their stories are linked in a very interesting way, not in a way that I worried they might go at one point. There's a couple of ways actually that I worried they might go with regards to how the story starts to unfold, where I was like, really? Because I know they're taking liberties with the comic book characters' origins and this, that and the other, but there were certain elements where like, no, that's too far. But then actually they twist it, they go a different route, different things happen to what you might expect. And in the end, I was very, very happy with the way that they utilised the character of Bruce Wayne in this and Thomas Wayne. Now, more so Thomas Wayne, he gets more to do here, but just the impact that Joker's actions, what he does in this film, the impact that has on Bruce's life, and the way that it kind of intertwines these two characters who we know have a long future kind of ahead of them after this film. It was very tragic, to say the least. But yeah, it breathed new life, I think, into these characters and made them the yin and yang, you know, the opposite sides, the flip sides of the same coin. These are people who, they both have a really bad day. Now, Arthur Fleck has more bad days, obviously, than Bruce. We see Bruce's one bad day. Arthur Fleck has many. But in this film, we see the one that tips him over the edge. We see the one that, pushes him down that chasm, so to speak. But what we ultimately see is that Bruce comes from a place of privilege. He comes from a home that loves him. And Arthur Fleck has the opposite of that. He doesn't come from privilege. He comes from poverty. And he comes from a history of abuse in society, of neglect, of various things that eventually are revealed through the film. And we get this picture of a man who, quite frankly, should have snapped perhaps much longer ago than this. So a really great character study, brilliant performance by Phoenix, really well handled by Phillips, and beautifully kind of integrated into the story of Bruce Wayne and Thomas Wayne, and just the Batman history, the mythos, really. Just changing it up a bit, but still giving us what we know from these characters, just from a slightly different angle, and that's what I loved about it. The cinematography by Lawrence Sher is also extremely beautiful. Just some shots that you're quite happy for them to linger on. One particular scene in the trailer when Arthur Fleck he's just done something and he runs into this bathroom stall. And there are many times during this film when I think as anxiety within him starts to bubble to the surface, he goes into this kind of trance-like state and he begins to do this dance. There's a few times where this happens during the movie, and it's almost like something takes hold of him. It's a way to calm himself in a way. He goes into a different world, and he does this dance, this slow dance in the bathroom stall, and it's beautifully shot. And we've got this green lighting effect, which obviously, you know, is that's Joker's colour in many ways when you think about his hair and who he's going to become. And it really reflects the character in the lighting, the mood, but it's just beautiful. As I say, you sit back and you just feel like in awe of these images, and you know, something ugly has just happened and yet you're transfixed by what you're seeing on screen as something that is beautiful, despite the setting. You know, he's in a pretty ugly bathroom stall, but sure makes it look beautiful. The score as well by Hildur Guðnadóttir. I've probably butchered that, but moving on. That too is immensely beautiful. Really, really beautiful score. Now, he did a score to Mary Magdalene. He's done a few others that I really love, but I liked what he did with the score for Mary Magdalene. He brings a very melancholic kind of strings type of score to it, a lot of violins. You hear a particular theme that resonates throughout the film that I guess is Joker's theme. But it's a very sad tune that kind of pulls you in to who Arthur Fleck is as a character, the tragedy of him as a character. The film also plays as a commentary on the responsibility and the role of media in society. You know, we see how Arthur Fleck looks towards this personality played by Robert De Niro. He has this talk show host. He looks to him as a hero, as someone to look up to aspire to. You know, we have scenes in which he daydreams about meeting him. And the daydream isn't quite the same as the reality. You know, when he eventually does meet this guy, you know, there's these events kind of conspire to bring the two together. And it's not quite the same as the daydream. And in that moment, we get it's this kind of like this conflict in which, as with the dialogue that is going on now in the press and things like that, De Niro's character essentially puts the blame all onto Fleck. You know, it's like, you need to take responsibility for your actions, but he doesn't take any for himself. You know, like he doesn't really treat Fleck in a particularly good way. His reasons for having him on the show are not particularly noble. So when he starts to kind of come at Fleck, to me, it feels a bit hypocritical. This guy seems like a hypocrite, even though he wants to kind of paint this picture that he's not. And, you know, he tells Fleck that he doesn't know anything about him. And it's like, well, no, he doesn't. But he does know why he was brought on the show, which says all it needs to say about who De Niro's character really is at heart. You think about shows like Jerry Springer, and over in the UK we have Jeremy Kyle, although I think his show's been axed recently. Thank God. I cannot stand Jeremy Kyle. Hate what his show stood for. I hate the idea that you bring people from lower working class backgrounds who, you know, maybe don't have the education, and you put them on as a sideshow and you manipulate them on TV for the purposes of entertainment. And yeah, this film, it plays on that. It deals with that. And it, again, holding that mirror up to society and the role we play, the responsibility we have to those who aren't quite as mentally competent as the rest. Even Thomas Wayne in this as well does have a certain sense of arrogance about him. He's clearly a character that wants to do the right thing. He appears to be running for mayor for the right reasons. Well, he talks the talk at any rate, but you could put that down to just being a politician. They all talk the talk, don't they? But yeah, this isn't Bruce Wayne, this is Thomas Wayne, and he does have certain flaws, I guess, certain character faults. He has a certain sense of arrogance about him. There's a one moment when he talked about the working classes, the lower classes, those in poverty as clowns. Certain parts of the lower classes, so to speak, and you could understand, why that would rattle cages, why that would make people feel offended. Coming from this rich guy, born with a silver spoon, that kind of thing. They don't make Thomas Wayne perfect in this. He's a man that I feel is probably trying to do the right thing, but is a flawed guy, just like anyone, I guess. I like that. I like that they don't turn him into... I mean, we've had different iterations, of these characters, and you like if you look at Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, Thomas Wayne in that, he was very, very much a hero, very much someone who was fighting for Gotham, in more political sense, as opposed to dressing up in a cape and cowl. But yeah, here we get an element of that, but the hero that we saw in Batman Begins is not quite the same here. He's definitely more rough around the edges, a bit rugged, willing to get his hands dirty from the look of it. There's one scene, which again we've seen in the trailer, where he punches Fleck, and again it doesn't make you warm to the guy. You can understand why he did it. I get it. There's certain reasons that go into his animosity towards Fleck in that moment, but I also feel that Fleck could have done with a bit more understanding in that moment from Thomas. Guy's definitely flawed, and I like that. It's good that they do that. It makes him more of a real person, and it shines a bit of a spotlight onto the differences between class and the ways in which they look at each other. Even when the upper classes are trying to help the lower classes, they can often do it with a certain sense of loftiness, of being higher than them. I loved this film, as you can tell. I don't really have any negatives. I came away from it just, having been wowed by the experience, having been pulled in. I know that there will be many people who essentially fob it off as just too much of a riff on those Scorsese films, and I don't think that's fair. It's the same reason people kind of fob off Avatar as just a Dances with Wolves in space. So what? Stories are recycled, styles are recycled, but to me the thing that is important is it a good film? And it is. It's a damn good film. It's just like, to me, I would much rather watch this again than Taxi Driver. I get Taxi Driver's influence. I get why people loved it so much, but I quite frankly wasn't as involved in that film. I wasn't as sympathetic towards the main character as I was with Arthur Fleck in this. And again, because this has ties to Batman, a character I'm very fond of and love, there's a lot in this film that really does speak to me and my Batman fandom. So to me, much more entertaining, much more engrossing, multiple things to say, multiple threads going throughout. And I'm sure it's a film that will reward me on repeat viewings. As I say, I've already seen it twice and I loved it both times. So 5 out of 5 from me. Absolutely brilliant. Cannot wait to see it again. Absolutely love it. What about you? Have you seen Joker? If so, what did you think about it? Who's your favourite Joker now that we've seen Phoenix in all his glory? For me personally, I think I am still going to go with Heath Ledger, but I totally understand why someone would say Phoenix as their favourite. I think Phoenix on the page certainly has a lot more character to deal with, whereas Ledger was kind of just this force of nature that was brought in, causes chaos, and then exits stage left at the end. So 2 completely different characters in that sense. So I think it's probably unfair to judge as to what is best. But certainly, what is your favourite? My favourite would probably still, I think it is still Ledger by a hair, but yeah, as I say, I could understand somebody going with Phoenix because the performance here is certainly Oscar worthy, and I do hope he gets that Oscar come Academy Award season. But like I say, leave your thoughts below. Tell me what you thought of this film, and until next time, cracking.